I tried this idea in New Vegas, and you all seem to really like the concept. So let's give it another go, only this time there will be 100% more settlements involved, as today we aim to figure out, can you beat Fallout 4 as a group? Okay, let's get the main issue out of the way first. Unlike New Vegas, there is no glitch that allows the player to have more than one companion at any given time, at least to my knowledge. So we're going to be bending the rules a little bit here by using some outside help in the form of a mod that lets me have infinite companions. The mod also gives me the option to immediately recruit a companion upon first meeting them without having to do their respective mission first. But for the sake of this video, I won't be doing that. If the New Vegas video was anything to go by, just getting to some of these companions was the most interesting parts. This is also probably the closest I'm going to ever come to doing a pacifist run of Fallout 4, as much like before, I won't be attacking anything this playthrough. With all that out of the way, let's get started. When assigning special stats, I make sure to max out Charisma, as it's the only time I'll probably have a reason to use it in Fallout 4. I then give myself 5 in luck for the Idiot Savant perk because it is the fastest way to level up. And finally, the rest of the points are piled into Endurance so that I can get some perks to increase my survivability in this run. I watch my wife, along with my own head, disappear and reappear before my very eyes, and then once I recover from that, I eagerly run my way to the vault and try my hardest to run past this soldier, but to no avail. With this being the 4th run I've done in Fallout 4, you all know by now that the intro section up until you leave Vault 111 never has anything worthwhile to do other than locking some roaches behind some doors. I'm thinking for future Fallout 4 runs I might just load a save right as I wake up from cryosleep so I don't have to sit through all the pre-war stuff, as it serves as nothing but to waste my time. And besides, the game lets you change your stats and appearance before you leave. Let me know what you all think. Once I'm outside, I figure dogmeat is probably my best option. He is the closest companion other than Codsworth, but unlike Codsworth, he doesn't require me to progress to a certain point of the story or rescue the Minutemen and Conquer before he becomes available. With Dog now by my side, I tried to test out his fighting capabilities and some nearby blood bugs to see what I have to work with for the time. Long story short, they drain him of all his blood and then they gang up on me and send me to an early grave. Next attempt, I grab dogmeat and we just avoid that for the time being, and I let him loose on the raiders outside of the Museum of Freedom. He does do a decent job of taking them down with the help of Preston. The biggest issue, however, is that most of the time, dogmeat prefers to bite and hold enemies in place rather than straight up kill them. This is all well and good when the player is, playing the game normally and will then attack the enemy while dogmeat has them held. But in my current situation, all it does is waste time, and then more often than not, dogmeat gets hit after the fact. Well, after a while, dogmeat manages to deal with the last raider, and I level up and take the inspirational perk, which at rank 1 just gives my companions a damage boost as well as making me immune to their attacks. Seeing how I'm probably going to have another fire squad situation like last time, that's probably going to be a good perk to have. I highly doubt dogmeat will be able to take out the Deathclaw on his own. If this was Fallout 3 dogmeat, I'd be throwing him at Swan right now without a care in the world. But as it stands, I'm going to need more firepower, so it was time to head south to Diamond City to see about getting Piper. On the way, I encountered a scavenger trying to blow up the doors of an old cellar to get the loot inside. As I approached, he became hostile, and so I tried my best to get dogmeat to tear his throat out, but alas, the issue from Concord reared its ugly head again, and he repeatedly just kept holding down the scavenger. Seeing how this was going nowhere anytime soon, I just entered the cellar and took the underwhelming loot for myself. Once out, I just continued on to Diamond City, all the while marking locations on the map until I leveled up again, and this time took the Idiot Savant perk. From here, I made it to Diamond City without getting into any more fights. I then did the interview with Piper so I could recruit her, and just like that, the team was starting to come together. Or at least, that's what I would say, but dogmeat kind of vanished off of the face of the earth at this point for a while. I didn't let that discourage me, however, and instead began heading for the combat zone as Cait seemed like the next logical choice given the close proximity. I should point out my plan is to get as many companions as I possibly can before going to rescue Nick, as I want to do as much of the main quest with as many followers as I can. First things first, I give Piper some actual armor, and then I send her off for her very first combat experience.
Gone. Just like that.
Yeah, things certainly could have gone better, I will admit. The very lackluster companion AI of Fallout 4 begins to rear its ugly head here, as despite the fact that there are clearly super mutants standing directly in front of us, Piper just sort of refuses to return fire in any way. She also does not listen to my commands of attack or go here. Rather than waste my time here, I figure I'll get back on track and head to the combat zone. Things are off to another rough start as I order her into a group of raiders in hopes that she will at the very least do something, and she is gunned down immediately. Thankfully, I have been hoarding stim packs like you wouldn't believe, so I just give her one, and then she pops right back up without a care in the world, and this seems to have activated kill mode. It seems that when she actually puts her mind to it, she can rip through these raiders rather effortlessly. I shouldn't be too surprised, the 10mm pistol is pretty amazing in Fallout 4, and she does have one with infinite ammo. She remains quite efficient throughout, clearing out the combat zone, and once she's finished, I talk to Cait and recruit her to the team. I just have Cait use her baseball bat for now. Having a mix of melee and ranged fighters worked rather well for New Vegas, so I'm hoping I can replicate that success here. Outside, and we get into another skirmish with some super mutants, and Cait is surprisingly able to hold her own pretty well, all things considered. Piper disappeared during the fight, but at least unlike Dogmeat, she returned shortly afterwards. In all honesty, the plan was now to head to Goodneighbor and get Macready and Hancock, but I ended up completely bypassing it somehow, and instead ended up at the Old North Church. I suppose I'm just drawn to it. Well, unlike usual, I'm actually keeping the railroad alive this time, as I want to have Deacon as a follower. So I get his quest, so I'll know where to go in a bit, and then I head south for Goodneighbor. The three of us had a pretty bad time with some gunners, and by that, I mean they both went down and I exploded. Next try, we avoided the gunners and I arrived safely in Goodneighbor. I completely forgot you actually had to pay to get Macready as a companion. Luckily, I had the necessary caps. From here, I begin to work with Bobby No-Nose, as if I remember correctly, you have to finish her heist before you can recruit Hancock. First part of this just has us kill 3 Mirelurks down in this tunnel. Thankfully, Macready alone seems to be able to take care of them in this situation. His hunting rifle is going to be a massive help to the team, I feel. Once the crabs are cooked, Bobby heads over to Diamond City, and I was about to head there myself when I figured Piper, Cait and Macready should probably be more than enough to deal with the early game raiders that are after Preston in the Museum of Freedom, so it was back to Concord. My suspicions were indeed correct. As they mowed their way through all the raiders, I took the fusion core for the power armor. Sure, I could still get in the suit, and it wouldn't even be the worst idea, the added protection would do wonders, but what would be even better was that I inserted the fusion core into the suit, and then ordered Cait to get in and gave her the minigun as well as all the ammo for it. I then fast traveled to just outside the museum, as I still don't trust the pathing of my companions to follow me down the stairs. From here, I then watched in absolute delight as Cait did a better job than I could ever hope to do with the minigun. She was scarily precise with it, and when the Deathclaw came out and was ready to throw hands, she tore it to bits within seconds. I think it will be in my best interest to keep her stocked up on ammo for that thing if I can, as it gets results fast. Well, with the Deathclaw dead, I inform Preston it is safe to leave and then head back to Sanctuary, as I can now recruit Codsworth to the cause. And if I remember correctly from my initial playthrough nearly 6 years ago, he is an absolute monster in terms of damage output with his buzzsaw and flamethrower combo. I also offer to help 10 pounds bluff for Preston. I figured I should side with the Minutemen, as that seems to be the side that annoys the least amount of people, so if nothing else, it should let me recruit the most companions. To help the settlers, we are off to the Corvega assembly plant, and lucky for me, I walked through Lexington earlier on my way to Diamond City, so I can be there in literally a few seconds. As expected, Codsworth begins to rip and tear his way through a sizable amount of the raiders. Not to say the others aren't doing a good job as well, but let's be honest, no one is standing up to that fire and saw combo. It was here where I also sort of figured out how I should be going about these encounters. When I did this in New Vegas, as soon as I was spotted by an enemy, my companions would jump into my rescue, and that was that. Fairly simple. But in Fallout 4, it seems that they will actually try to stick close to the player rather than rush down the enemies. So, with that in mind, the new strat was for me to sprint straight into danger, and then hopefully my companions would be right behind me and would then actually do their job of taking out the enemy. I tried it out with Jared and his raiders, and it seemed to get results, but I'll need to keep doing it just to make sure this isn't a fluke. With the raiders dealt with, it was back to 10 pounds bluff, and then Preston, to get congratulated for a job well done and retrieve my reward of Preston himself. Only a few more companions to go now, so I head back to Diamond City, as I want to help Bobby break her friend Mel out of jail. I didn't remember this part of the quest, so I assumed I would need to be stealthy, but as a matter of fact, all I did was grab the key from this desk, unlock the cell in front of all of the guards, and then Mel just briskly jogged his way out the door, literally in view of everyone with no repercussions at all. Yup. After performing the prison break of the century, I begin going through the dig site with my militia, Mel and Bobby. This quest takes a lot longer when you have too many people down these narrow hallways. Bobby and Mel kept getting stuck behind everyone, and it was just such a boring drag. The only two interesting parts were when we got jumped by a legendary Mirelurk King, and we somehow managed to kill it without me running out of stim packs in the process. And then the second part was when we entered the train station and got attacked by a massive group of ghouls, and I just got to watch as my ever-growing army massacred them all with ruthless efficiency. When we arrive at the end, I just chose to have Bobby executed by firing squad, get a pretty great unique minigun from Celsius that does added fire damage, and then recruited the coolest ghoul you ever did see to the team. With Hancock by our side, I felt I had a substantial enough fighting force to help Deacon out with the synth problem, so that's where we're off to next. When I met up with Deacon, I paid no mind to what he says, as I am more distracted by the random falling radstag in the background. These games are indeed magical. Despite having my own mercenary company by my side, I still think it's best to enter from the back and go into the sewers. This is also where the most obvious of problems begins to really shine through, and that's getting stuck in small hallways like this. Sure, I can usually push my way through easy enough, but it's in situations like these when an NPC needs to get past to activate something, like Deacon with this terminal, when things begin to become problematic. When we encounter our first synths, things actually go pretty well. Hancock's double-barreled shotgun really packs a punch. Plus, some of the other companions picked up institute weapons along the way, which were more than enough to help punch a hole through them. Just like that, we reached the end of the quest and got our special unique pistol as a reward. I tried giving it to Piper as I assumed that since she had a 10mm pistol with infinite ammo, then she'd be able to use this for free as well. Turns out I am a fool, as it doesn't work like that, so that gun is pretty much worthless unless I decide to buy a whole heap of ammo for it. Back at the Railroad HQ, and I can now officially add Deacon to the roster, as well as loot them of every somewhat valuable item that they own. You didn't think just because I wasn't murdering them this time that I still wouldn't rob them blind, did you? Now, we only have 4 more companions to get. 5 if you count the still missing dogmeat. Well, really, I have 2 options, as Dancing X688 can't be recruited until later on, and I want to grab as many as I can before I free Nick, so that leaves me with Strong and Curie. Well, I actually like Strong more in terms of diversity, so I head off to Trinity Tower to see how well we do against supermutants. Short answer, we do well. Cait is able to keep them staggered while most of the others focus fire, and Codsworth goes off on his own killing spree for a while. I was a little worried about everyone spawning inside the elevators at once, but luckily it didn't seem to cause any horrible side effects, as they were all able to make it to the top of the tower and gang up on Fist and take him out with relative ease. I was able to grab some of the supermutant's armor for Strong, seeing how he's a special boy and needs his own set of clothes. I had a feeling taking the lift down wouldn't be an option for everyone, so to save space I just took Piper. Well, Deacon decided he didn't want to live in a world where he didn't get to ride the elevator, and so he jumped off the side of the building and presumably to his death. The ride down is rather uneventful, as I just stand around and wait for the shooting to stop. We did bump into Hancock halfway down. Not quite sure how he got here, but every little helps, I guess. Once we fight our way down to the bottom, we regroup with the others, get our reward from Rex, spot the ghost of Deacon, add Strong to the crew, and then the game crashes. I think that's the first time we've ever had a crash in Fallout 4, so that's neat. Loading back, and it's onwards to Vault 81 to find yet another robot to add to the team. If Curie is even half as good as Codsworth, then this will definitely be worth it. We encountered some supermutants on the way, and I realised that at some point Macready must have grabbed Fist's minigun, because he whipped one out of nowhere, and sure as hell I didn't give him one. Needless to say, it makes fairly quick work of anything green in the surrounding area. Except Strong, of course. When I arrived at Vault 81, my heart sank as I thought I was going to have to go find a bunch of fusion cores, as I remember that being a prerequisite for gaining access to the vault. Thankfully, I put all my points in charisma. That's something I didn't think I'd ever say, and I was able to smooth talk my way into the vault. We can't actually get Curie yet. First, I have to donate some blood to the clinic, and then I meant to leave and do a quest, or find this girl's cat, which will then trigger the quest to find Curie. I, of course, chose to save the cat, as it's more convenient, plus I get to extort this child for everything she owns. Kind of wish she had bottle caps and not kickballs and teddy bears, but I suppose it can't be helped. The cat is only a few feet down the road, so it's neither long or difficult, more so just time consuming. Right on schedule, and this kid begins dying, and I'm the only one that can help him. I also realize that when NPCs are talking with one another and are labeled as busy, if you try to talk with the person who is currently speaking, it skips to the next line of dialogue. So trying to get through as fast as possible leads to moments like this.
Excuse me, Dr. Forsyth.
I think I found something.
Bobby,
Hold on,
Hi,
Priscilla.
Dr.
What
Forsyth.
is it, Bobby?
you mean your camp?
Hi.
Get to the point, Bobby. What did
Excuse
you
me.
find in that house?
It's like a whole
A secret vault. Good lord.
Now it's off to the secret part of the vault filled with mole rats and French robots. I just sprint through the whole vault right to the end where Curie is, and then just sit here and wait until my companions fight their way to me, as she won't actually open the door until everything is dealt with. Given the amount of firepower we have at our disposal, this really doesn't take very long. And now we have another robot and a cure for mole rat disease. I give the cure to the boy and then officially bring Curie into the fold. All that leaves now for companions is Nick, so in other words, yes, it's finally time to start the main quest. Since this quest is meant to be done at a fairly low level, the Triggermen really were not prepared for what was about to walk through that door. I got a little more involved in these fights by using certain objects as cover to try and avoid getting shot, as well as following Strong around for a while and eating whoever he killed. After rescuing Nick, the AI seemed to go brain dead, as they can't seem to figure out that they should come down the stairs to help me fight the Triggermen. When they finally did follow me down, Nick was ready to engage in what could have been the longest close quarters shootout ever, but thankfully for once Preston had the right idea. When it came to Skinny Malone, I really didn't feel like sitting through his dialogue and went to walk out and leave, which then caused him to aggro and my followers to immediately enter kill mode. They wiped the floor with him and his goons in seconds. Cait even somehow decapitated him with a swing of the baseball bat. I really wish they were this aggressive all the time. We all know where this is heading, so let's go over this quickly. I head back to Diamond City, steal Kellogg's key from the mayor's office, talk with Nick about Kellogg, we then raid his house, I officially get Nick as a companion, and then thankfully, after a long vacation, Dogmeat returns to offer his assistance. Having done this multiple times, I know where Fort Hagen is off the top of my head, so I travel to Drumlin Diner and begin heading southwest. We get into a few minor scuffles on the way, the first of which ended up proving to be fairly useful in the long run as we stumbled into the Federal Stockpile Exchange. While the raiders were distracted by the large group of angry wastelanders approaching on their position, I ran towards the suit of nearby power armor and stole the fusion core just to make sure that none of the raiders would try to use it. Once the fighting stopped and everyone had their fill, I decided to send Macready to put on the power armor. The obvious choice would be Hancock, as he tends to be in the thick of the fight most of the time with his shotgun, but honestly, I like the irony of him wearing a hazmat suit far too much to make him change this getup. With Macready geared up, we continued on and bumped into the second scuffle I mentioned, and that was another Deathclaw. Considering we now have a much larger group of people to fight at our disposal, they are more than able to take it down. Arriving at Fort Hagen, and I immediately enter through the roof, as waiting for my companions to circle around the building multiple times to take out the turrets would just take far too long. Once inside, I realise I am all by myself, and then immediately get torn to shreds by some nearby synths. Okay, next attempt, and I realise I can hear my companions fighting, so they're in the building somewhere. So I used a stealth boy and managed to sneak past the synths on my level and was able to drop through a hole in the floor and regroup with the squad. Synths aren't all that bad, as whenever the whole team opens fire at once, they usually end up blowing off a lot of their limbs and then taking them down shortly afterwards. So with that in mind, let's skip ahead to Kellogg himself.
Oh, I'm ready. Question is, are you?
He was not. It didn't even take much to put him down either. He just got repeatedly staggered by Cait, and then got boxed in by her, Codsworth, and Deacon, and then I'm pretty sure Codsworth, the DPS god, just slit his throat. After I grab his brain and talk with Nick, he tells me that I should go speak to Piper in Diamond City, completely oblivious to the fact she is standing right here. Well, long story short, this soft-locked the game. I couldn't get me, Nick, and Piper to have the conversation about the memory den, as no matter where Piper was, or if I tried to talk or dismiss her, it would just constantly say she was busy. With no other options, I had to load back to just before Kellogg and dismiss Piper, so it should be back in Diamond City, and then did the fight again. That's not a big deal or anything, just a little inconvenient. In case anyone is curious, Strong smashed his head into dust this time. Luckily, this did in fact work, and the conversation began as normal in Piper's office, and once it was done, I recruited both Nick and Piper back to the team, and figured now was a good time as any to go to Arcjet and get Dance. Ghouls are fairly squishy creatures, so it doesn't take long for the crew to cut a line through them and I start talking to Dance. The hike to Arcjet was mostly uneventful. That is, at least until a radiation storm appeared and Dance decided that he wasn't dealing with that shit and just wandered off into the green mist. When I entered Arcjet, he spawned in with me, so at least I'm not having to load back again just to make the game stable. We get through Arcjet quickly, as even when you do this solo, Dance tends to kill most of the synths himself. I did get to watch a pretty neat fight at the bottom of the facility with the hordes of synths against my merry band of misfits. Once we all leave, I agree to join the Brotherhood and realise that once again we have lost Dogmeat. According to the map, he seems to be at the Red Rocket gas station near Sanctuary, but when I get there, he is nowhere to be found. Hopefully he somehow appears again, but I have my doubts at this point. I then head back to the police station, make my way to the Prudwin to listen to Maxon's speech, and then after all this, I'm able to finally get Dance as a companion. That only leaves X6, but we can't get him until we get into the Institute, so it's time to continue on with the story for now. It is nice just to fast travel to Good Neighbor for once at this part of the story, rather than having to run there, I will admit. I'll be honest, I was just waiting for Nick to break like Piper did earlier when I arrived here, but I'm glad that was not the case. I then run through the brain for a bit, and once I'm out, it's off to the Glowing Sea. On the way, we encounter more Deathclaws, one alpha and one legendary to be precise. The alpha only takes slightly longer to take down than an average one, so things continue to go smoothly for us. Meeting up with Virgil means it's green tech time, and we know what that means, gunners and coursers. Yippee. The gunners are actually harder to deal with than the courser if I'm being honest. The narrow corridors mean my companions tend to get jammed a lot and can't really do anything. I also get blindsided by a missile in one of the attempts, which was really not fun at all. I eventually decide to just sprint through as some of the slower followers act as a distraction for me. Surprisingly, it works, and before long I am face to face with a synth. The only friends of mine that made it to the fight were Codsworth, Macready, and Hancock. They synergized off each other pretty well. Macready played tank as he got the attention of the courser, while Codsworth slashed away at him, and Hancock just unleashed some grapples to slow him down. Needless to say, it didn't take long for the dream team here to come out on top, and thanks to Deacon being with us, I can just head straight to the railroad and get the chip decoded, and then return to Big Green to get the plans for the teleporter. Since I'll probably need to side with the Minutemen to avoid all-out war in my crew, I head back to Sturgis and get to work on the device. It actually shocked me that I had all the materials that I required, as I felt I hadn't been doing a good job of scavenging, but I'm not going to complain, as by this point this has already been my longest Fallout 4 challenge, and I still need to do quests to get X6. Inside the Institute, and I go as fast as I can and just mash through any and all dialogue as I meet the different leaders so that I can get my tasks and leave. First up, I need to go and recall a synth posing as a raider. I actually have X6 backing me up in this mission, but he doesn't become a permanent companion until Father announces me as his successor in a bit. Actually dealing with the raider is a piece of cake. I thought I'd have a hard time as one of them up top has a fat man, but I'm guessing they were more focused on my companions as I was able to just run up the stairs with almost no resistance. Once I come face to face with the leader, I just use the recall code while my followers mess up his two guards, and then make my way back to the Institute to be congratulated on a job well done. Next, we have the Battle of Bunker Hill. Well, it's meant to be a massive three-way fight between the Institute, Railroad, and Brotherhood, but because I'm part of each of those factions, not a single person attacks me as they all think I'm on their side. So, once again, I walk through with no issue and just recall the synths. Afterwards, I meet up with Father and he informs me he is in fact dying and that I'm going to be his successor. This means we can now get X6 and finally have a full squad except for Dogmeat, who has still vanished into the next dimension. With the maximum number of friends I can have without counting DLC, I decided to test out their strength in the best way possible by fighting some bosses. First up is an old favourite, Swan. Poor old Swan never stood a chance as the firing squad unleashed hell upon him. I'd say they still aren't as effective as the new Vegas squad mates, but definitely still a force to be reckoned with to be sure. Seeing how Swan didn't put up much of a fight, I thought the next best thing would be a Mirelurk Queen, and what better way to test that than by going to the castle for the Minutemen. Before that though, I had to help a few settlements with raider issues. Literally nothing exciting happened during these quests other than Strong making us all a nice stew. Speaking of Strong, when we got to the fight with the Queen, he refused to do anything and instead just stood next to me as all the others pulled their weight and tried to put down the crab. Turns out he might be cleverer than I thought, as right when it dropped to low health, he charged in and tried to steal the kill from the others. Granted, I'm pretty sure he failed, but regardless, I kind of admire the attempt to steal all the XP. With the castle now in the hands of the Minutemen, this is where I realised I messed up. Let me explain. To actually have access to the Minutemen ending, you need to be on bad terms with the Institute. This can only be done if you refuse Father when you first meet him, kill him, or choose certain dialogue with him after the Battle of Bunker Hill. I also cannot side with the Institute or Brotherhood because that requires me to kill the Railroad. The issue there isn't losing Deacon, it's that the main members of the Railroad are protected NPCs. Basically, what that means is the player character can kill them no problem, but no one else can. As you can see from the footage on screen, Dr. Carrington just keeps getting knocked over and will never actually die. Unless I want to fail the run, this leaves me with one last option. I need to load back before I entered the Institute for the first time and reject Father's offer. Here is where another issue presents itself. My closest save to that point is just after I killed Kellogg. Well, I'm not taking the easy way out, so I loaded back, went to ArcJet, recruited Dance, messed around in Kellogg's brain, met Virgil, dealt with the Courser, got Sturges to help me into the Institute again just so I could be an ass to Father, and then actually continue this run. I really don't want to bore you all by repeating events I already went over, so just know I did some settlements for the Minutemen, as well as the necessary stuff to get the castle, and then got Ronnie Shaw to appear as that's one of the requirements for a Minutemen ending. I think. I quickly proceed with Ronnie's dialogue and clear the rubble to make my way underneath the castle, where I'm almost instantly ripped to pieces by mines and turrets. Trying that again, and I approach with a more cautious mindset and let Dance clear the way. I was ready for Sarge to be a tough fight, as from past experiences, sentry bots really don't mess around in Fallout 4. Well, turns out there really is strength in numbers. That, or maybe getting repeatedly stunlocked by a giant ogre and an angry Irish girl, really just isn't good for one's health. Who can say? Sarge, in all honesty, probably did more damage in death than he did in life, considering how many people he got caught in the blast. Considering everyone was playing Fashion Souls and Dance was still in his normal gear, I thought he might feel left out, so I let him run around with the Minutemen General's hat for a while, if for nothing else to make him feel better. I then did the usual tasks of getting the artillery set up, and then to my delight, it turns out I had already more than enough settlements for the Minutemen, so it was already time to defend the castle from the Institute and proceed to the final mission. I've underestimated this fight before, so I made sure everything was ready for the attack. It went rather well for a while. The gang decided to split up, with me, Hancock, Cait, Strong and Codsworth going to defend the castle from the rear, while the others stayed in the courtyard with the rest of the Minutemen to deal with the synths there. Thankfully, I'd been preparing for this moment and gave Cait all the ammo I'd been saving up for the minigun and just let her go nuts with the Ashmaker. Needless to say, it sped things along rather nicely. I won't pretend like this wasn't a struggle, as at one point everybody got knocked down and I thought I would have to try again. Thankfully, I can just go through the door below the castle to bring everyone to me where they'll be fully healed and ready to get back in the fight. The only repercussion of this is that when I went to leave, I briefly clipped underneath the stairs. I'm happy to say that all I needed to do was run out to the right and I snapped back to reality. From here, the newly rejuvenated squad laid waste to all the remains of the synths, and it was time for us all to enter the Institute and end this once and for all. But first, when I travelled to the CIT ruins, I noticed that the UFO crashed nearby. Well, I can't not go and investigate. To make things more interesting, I decided that whoever manages to kill the alien gets the blaster. Well, after immediately entering, Hancock ran straight up to the poor thing and fired off both barrels of his shotgun immediately, disfiguring its head and claiming the gun for himself. Grabbing the alien blaster ended up being one of the greatest decisions I made in this run. As with it, Hancock essentially assumed the role of the main character of this story and began to take the fight to the Institute all by himself. No man, synth, or gorilla was able to put up a fight against Astronaut Zombie. In the final room, the gang came together one last time, and now working like a well-oiled machine, were able to clear the room in record time while I planted the fusion pulse charge on the reactor. One annoyance that didn't even cross my mind until now is that each companion has to be individually transported back to the entrance of the Institute by Sturgis, so I was kind of stuck here getting pretty badly irradiated while waiting for my turn. The real kicker is that no more than 20 seconds after this, I had to wait for it to happen again, as Sturgis then had to transport us all out one by one. Considering how slow the rest of this run has been for me in terms of having to get footage, I feel like this is one final insult from the game before I wrap things up. Once I finally made my way out, I pushed the detonator without a second thought, finishing the game and proving yes, you can indeed beat Fallout 4. As a group. Whew. This was meant to be a shorter, easier video for me to work on while I continued work on the Fallout 3 Abe Lincoln video, but due to my own blunders, this became its own beast entirely. A lot of you are probably going to ask which one of these I enjoyed better, this or the New Vegas run? Without a doubt, it was New Vegas. Am I being biased simply because of all the things that went wrong in this playthrough? Regardless, that's going to be the end of this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like, and if you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe to try to find one of these videos out every week. My name is Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.